the fracture revealed the foundation. One of the things I learned during my years in operations is that major change has a way of revealing weaknesses. An organization can appear healthy for years when conditions remain stable. Processes seem effective. Communication appears strong. Teams function well together. Everyone assumes the operation is functioning exactly as it should. Then something changes. Volume increases, a key employee leaves, a new system is introduced, expectations shift. Suddenly, the weaknesses that were always present become impossible to ignore. The change itself did not create the problem. The problem was already there. The change simply exposed it. Over the years, I watched that pattern repeat itself often enough that it became predictable. The strongest departments were rarely the ones that looked impressive when everything was running smoothly. The strongest departments were the ones that continued functioning when the pressure arrived. At the time, I thought that lesson applied primarily to business. It took me much longer to realize it applies to relationships as well. Several years ago, I found myself walking through one of the most difficult seasons of my adult life. Within a relatively short period of time, nearly every area of life seemed to become uncertain at once. My career was changing in ways I had never anticipated. My family was navigating significant health concerns. Other circumstances that I never expected to face required emotional energy I wasn't sure I possessed. Individually, each challenge would have been manageable. Together, they created a kind of pressure that touched every corner of my life. Like most people, I assumed the greatest challenge would be navigating the circumstances themselves. I expected the pressure to reveal my own weaknesses, my own fears, and my own limitations. What I did not expect was how much it would reveal about the relationships around me. For most of my life, I believed that closeness and loyalty were closely connected. If people knew you well, surely they would give you the benefit of the doubt. If they loved you, surely they would seek understanding before forming conclusions. If they had shared years of life alongside you, surely they would remain steady when circumstances became difficult. At least that was what I believed. Then the pressure arrived. Conversations occurred in rooms where I was not present. Comments found their way back to me. Assumptions were made, conclusions were drawn without questions ever being asked. In some cases, I learned that opinions had been formed about my motives, my decisions, and my character by people I assumed knew me well enough to ask before judging. That realization was painful. Not because I expected everyone to agree with me, not because I needed universal support, but because the criticism came from people whose opinions mattered. Criticism from strangers is rarely what wounds us most deeply. Strangers do not know our history. They do not know the years that shaped us, the burdens we carry, or the intentions behind our decisions. The wounds that linger tend to come from people who should know us well enough to know better. For a long time, I focused on that part of the story. I focused on the disappointment. I focused on the misunderstandings. I focused on the relationships that felt different than they once had. Looking back now, I understand why. Loss naturally draws our attention. When something breaks, our eyes go immediately to the fracture. We study it. We replay it. We wonder whether it could have been prevented. What I failed to notice at first was that the same pressure revealing weaknesses was revealing strengths as well. While some relationships became strained, others quietly grew stronger. While some people made assumptions, others asked questions. While some stepped back, others stepped closer. While some chose speculation, others chose trust. The same season that revealed fractures also revealed foundations. I began to notice the people who checked in without being asked, the people who extended grace when they could have chosen criticism, the people who trusted my character, even when they did not fully understand my circumstances, the people who demonstrated loyalty, not through dramatic gestures, but through consistency. The older I get, the more convinced I become that those are the relationships that sustain a life. Not necessarily the loudest relationships, Not necessarily the relationships that attract the most attention, but the relationships capable of carrying weight. The relationships that remain steady when life becomes complicated. The relationships that survive misunderstanding, disappointment, and change. The relationships that continue showing up long after the crisis itself has passed. What surprises me now is that I rarely think about the comments that once hurt so deeply. Time has a way of changing our perspective. The things that once felt enormous often shrink when viewed from a distance. The conversations that occupied our thoughts for months eventually fade into the background. The people who misunderstood us become less significant than the people who remained. What stays with me now is not the fracture. What stays with me is the foundation. I remember the people who stood beside me when life stopped making sense. I remember the conversations that offered encouragement when discouragement would have been easier. I remember the loyalty, the grace, and the quiet faithfulness that revealed itself during a season when I desperately needed all three. That is why I no longer think of that chapter primarily as a story about disappointment. It is a story about clarity. The pressure revealed weaknesses that I would rather not have discovered, but it also revealed strengths I might otherwise have overlooked. It showed me that proximity and loyalty are not always the same thing. It showed me that shared history does not automatically produce understanding. It showed me that some relationships are stronger than they appear, and some are far weaker than we had imagined. Most importantly, it showed me that God often uses difficult seasons to reveal gifts that were present all along. When I look back now, I can still acknowledge the hurt. The hurt was real. The disappointment was real. The fracture was real. But I am no longer convinced that the fracture was the most important part of the story. Because if the season ultimately revealed the people who would remain, the people who would continue showing up, and the people whose loyalty could bear weight, then I am no longer sure I lost what I thought I lost. What felt like rejection revealed faithfulness. What felt like isolation revealed companionship. What felt like a breaking apart revealed relationships that were stronger than I knew. In operations, major change reveals the true condition of a system. Life does much the same thing. The pressure did not create the fracture. It revealed it. But in revealing the fracture, it also revealed the foundation. And years later, when I think about that difficult season, I find myself asking the question that has shaped so much of my thoughts these days. Did I really lose anything? Or did God simply use the pressure to show me what was strong enough to remain?